That's great. Thanks very much indeed. I'll just get everything shared. Okay. So that's great. Thanks very much, everybody, for attending my session today. So as introduced, I'm Ashton-Leatherland, and today I'm going to be talking to you about exploring Windows 10 device configuration with Microsoft Intune. So first of all, I'd just like to thank the event organisers for choosing my session today. I've also got another session later on modern Android device management with Intune. And also many thanks to our generous sponsors for supporting this event. So just a little bit about myself. I've had a varied working career, quite an interesting one. Started off in the British military, serving in the Royal Navy. I then worked as a trawler fisherman for 4 years, which was, as you can imagine, tough, very interesting, very hard work. I've now been in IT for just over 10 years. Absolutely love it. I'm turning into a real sort of geek now, and just really enjoying keeping up to speed with the latest technologies. I'm currently working as an internal delivery consultant, specialising in modern workplace technologies at a company in the UK called Power On Platforms, who are an EMS elite partner. I'd like to consider myself as a bit of an Intune geek. I love the product. Especially around the Windows and the Android space, hence the two presentations today. Also work with Config Manager, more of the kind of cloudy aspects of Config Manager, and I'm particularly interested in the mechanics of the co-management scenario. I'm one of the founders of a user group in the UK based out of Kings Lynn in Norfolk called the East of England Microsoft User Group. We've had 2 meetups so far. The first one obviously being able to meet in person, and obviously because of the challenging times at the moment, our hands were tied and we were forced to have our first virtual event, which I believe went pretty well. And just to add, in order to be able to organise an event at the scale of this one, the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon is mind blowing. So credit to those who are organising this. I also like to do a bit of blogging. My blog is Leon's IT blog. Just do a Google search of my name. I'm pretty sure there's only one of me in the world, to be honest. Okay, so just to start off with then, I'm just going to briefly talk about the Microsoft Endpoint Manager brand. So it's a new brand that aligns multiple technologies, including Intune and Config Manager, into the same brand, which was announced during the Ignite event in November 2019. So we have Microsoft Intune, a mobile device management solution, or indeed it's a UEM solution. So I'm not going to get too involved with the terminology, with the capability to manage Windows, Android, iOS, iPadOS, and macOS devices. It fully embraces the needs and indeed the challenges of securing Windows within the modern workplace. So also within the brand, you have Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. So for those of you that have been around a while and been working in the end user compute space, formerly SMS, SCCM, Config Manager. So that's just to advise, that's also one of the main components within the brand. Now, just to add here, Config Manager and Intune have been specifically engineered to work with one another, providing the ability to manage Windows 10 devices at the same time. This is called co-management. So note that the Intune is the only MDM solution that can leverage this specific scenario. So typically, when we talk about managing a device with 2 different platforms, it's every admin's nightmare. It's going to cause typically all sorts of issues, but not in this specific scenario. So again, just to reiterate, it's only Intune that's the only MDM solution that can leverage this. If you're using a different MDM solution and the Config Manager agent is on a device, then what will happen is the config manager agent will offload all workloads to the third-party MDM in order to avoid conflicts. This scenario is specifically called coexistence. So the brand with it brings a nice new admin center, the Microsoft Endpoint Manager admin center, which gives the ability to be able to manage Intune, co-managed and config manager only devices via the same console. So just a caveat with that, that's the new feature was implemented as of the 2002 version of config manager current branch. So the brand also includes additional products. Just be aware that some of these will require additional licensing. So you have Windows Autopilot, which is a service that acts as an alternative to traditional OSD, which is where the existing OS image on a device is provisioned and configured, making it ready for production use. This also supports bulk purchasing and a rollout solution if you purchase Windows Autopilot ready devices via partners, and they're able to provision them devices for you. We also have Desktop Analytics, which is a cloud service that integrates into Config Manager, providing comprehensive information on your desktop estate, just kind of enabling to make you to make informed decisions on compatibility for your Windows 10 upgrades. We also have Microsoft Defender ATP within the brand, which is a comprehensive security solution that utilizes the Microsoft Defender engine and Windows OS security features. And finally, within the brand, you also have Azure AD. So just thought I'd highlight that to start off with. So when we're talking about the management of Windows 10 within Intune, within the modern workplace, users are expected to be able to collaborate and be productive from wherever they're located, which brings obviously with it a set of significant security challenges. Windows 10 was kind of born with this in mind. As the OS has developed across versions, additional functionality is being added, many of which are now have been added to the very comprehensive set of components that are within the Microsoft Defender brand. First of all, we'll just like to talk about some of these features that were available in previous versions of Windows. So to start off with, Microsoft Defender antivirus. So an antivirus engine with the ability to carry out real-time, quick and full scans on a device for the detection of malware. A bit like a drive encryption, it says data protection using the built-in drive encryption feature of the OS itself. App blocker, this is the ability to allow only approved files and applications to be executed on a Windows device. Again, this has been around pre-Windows 10, just to reiterate, all these features we're just covering at the moment. Microsoft Defender Firewall, I'm sure we all know and love that feature very well, formerly called Windows Firewall, the ability to control inbound and outbound network traffic on your Windows clients. And then finally, there's Microsoft Defender Smart Screen. This monitors web traffic with within any web browser for suspicious activity, and it monitors the download of any files reporting as potentially suspicious. So that's what was available pre-Windows 10. And you'd like to think that, well, actually, surely all of these features are enough. There was quite a lot there. Well, not really anymore. We're in a world where threats are becoming more diverse. When it comes to specifically antivirus, more often than not, the client will not have visibility of some of the threats that are in the world within its antivirus signatures. So Windows 10 additional features have been developed which are aimed at reducing the number of areas a threat can make its way onto the device. These are called attack surface reduction capabilities. So first of all, we have Exploit Guard. So it's a set of capabilities that is aimed at reducing the attack surface of Windows 10 devices through the following components. So we have attack surface reduction rules. So it's a set of 15 controls which are designed to prevent malware getting onto a device by blocking Office, script and email-based threats. You also have within Exploit Guard network protection. This blocks any outbound processes to untrusted hosts or IP addresses using the smart screen component. Controlled folder access. This provides ransomware protection by preventing untrusted processes from accessing protected folders. And then finally, within the exploit guard feature, you also have exploit protection. This is a set of operating system mitigations which prevents exploits. So again, that's just one component of the newer Windows 10 security features. A lot there. So in addition to this, I'm just going to briefly talk about the other ones. You also have Defender application control. So this is available and it operates on an all apps are untrusted model, meaning that the code executed by users and the system core is controlled. And the final kind of feature to mention is application guard. This protects the Edge browser through using the Hyper-V feature of the OS, and it uses a container to prevent any attacks from untrusted websites. So how do we go about configuring all of these settings? First of all, we'll talk about security baselines. When focusing on device security, for most organizations, it really is hard to know where to start when securing Windows. Too heavy a management and you're going to get a poor user experience. But ultimately, too light a management is not going to satisfy the most basic requirements that you need to secure devices. So security baselines are now available within Intune, a very good starting place for this. So these baseline settings are the equivalent of what's available within the group policy baselines that are available for download within the security compliance toolkit, which is updated for each new version of Windows 10. The baselines, they contain recommended configurations developed from within the Microsoft security teams, and within that there are three types. The Windows 10 MDM baselines, this is generic kind of Windows 10 for the whole device, and then there's a couple of component specific baselines, Defender ATP and Edge as well. So one thing I would add with baselines is sometimes it's almost a bit of a one-size-fits-all approach for this, and there are settings within security baselines that cannot be set to not configured in order to be bypassed if for your organisation you do not want to sort of deploy a specific setting. For example, the exploit protection XML requires a value to be specified in a security baseline. When securing Windows, it's crucial that devices are monitored for critical components affecting the security posture of the device, not only from just a reporting perspective, but also in order to be able to provide facilitate conditional access to resources based on it only if a device is compliant to a policy. So our compliance policies in Intune provide a platform to do this. So the policy provides the ability to evaluate components related to the device health. So this is device health as retrieved from information received from the device health attestation service. For example, things like is secure boot enabled on the device? Various device property components you can monitor for. So set a minimum and/or maximum versions of the OS, for example. And you can also evaluate for config manager compliance as well in our co-managed scenario, as I kind of discussed earlier on. You can also evaluate for system security, so password, Microsoft Defender, etc. And finally, Defender ATP, so to set the risk score to be at a specific score on that compliance policy. Okay, so I'm just going to drop into a quick demo here. What we are focusing on at the moment is the endpoint security node. So this is the endpoint management admin center. I'm going to call it the EMAC, just for purposes of discussion. I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm going to call it the EMAC. So in the EMAC, at the moment for this specific demo, we're going to focus on the endpoint security node. Okay. So fairly recently implemented into the service, and the first component we'll talk about are our security baselines. Okay. So security baselines are here, and as mentioned before, we've got 3 different types. Okay, so you've got your Windows baselines, so your generic Windows settings. Now, just to be, you'll see shortly, but just to be clear, there are a lot of settings in this baseline, and if you were to decide to just deploy the default baseline to your whole organization, it's a very quick way of crippling your devices if you're not very careful and thorough with your testing. And then you've got your ATP baselines and your edge baselines, which are kind of component specific. So let's have a look at our Windows 10 or our MDM baselines. Okay, I've already got one deployed, and this kind of a nice reporting view here that kind of shows you the posture of on a per component basis. In reference to where your baseline is deployed to on your estate. Okay, it's quite a good reporting capability there. So how do we create a profile? So select the option to create a profile. Now this is just to show you how easy it is to create one of these. So select sorry, I've skipped past there. So create a name for your profile. Now, at the moment, there's only one baseline version that can be used. So the benefit of using security baselines is what you can actually do is you can compare settings between 2 profile versions of the baseline, and then opt to change them if you wish. And one would assume that there'll be future versions of the baselines released. So move along into the configuration settings of the baseline itself. As you can see, there are a lot. I mean, these are just the categories of the settings. There are a lot of settings in here, covering Microsoft Defender, your firewall, and this is your exploit guard feature. So as you can see, by default, you have to specify an XML file in here. So if you used to remove that and try and proceed through the wizard, it wouldn't allow you to. So it means you have to just assign an element of an exploit protection XML to your devices. Nice search feature at the top. Be aware though, the search feature is by setting. Okay, so if I try and search for exploit guard, it will not show what I'm looking for. So you just got to understand the specific setting that you're looking for there. Okay. So yeah, this is how you would amend the settings as if you weren't key on the default. So just to reiterate, by default, a lot of these settings are enabled and they're aligned with Microsoft recommendations. Okay, so click on next. Scope tags. So if the scope tags are used for the delegation of administration within your tenant, so if you want certain users to be able to see specific settings, you can set a scope tag in there. We're not going to look at that for now. And then we would assign the baseline to a group of devices. Okay, so you can select a group here and then search for your group, select on that, and that's how you'd essentially deploy your baseline, review the settings and then create. And that's basically it. So I'm not going to create that one as we already have one created. So that's the security baselines. I've got a slide later on with some recommendation as to what you should use when, some generic recommendations from myself, but be very, very careful with these and be very thorough with your testing before trying to roll out to your estate. So now we've got, if we move further down, we've got our security admin focus policies. Okay, that's in the within the manage node. Okay, So we've got antivirus, disk encryption, firewall, endpoint detection, response, attack surface reduction, account protection. This is essentially a way of splitting down the settings that are available within the baseline, and it gives you more flexibility on the settings that you can enable or disable. Okay, so I'll just show you that now. So if we select antivirus, within each of these nodes, gives you the ability to create a policy. And in some instances, you're able to select a platform. So for your Microsoft Defender antivirus, you can actually select the macOS platform. And then it will drop you down into the various profile types that are available within the group. Okay, so we'll just run through one of these for Defender. Click create. Excuse me. Similar experience to before as with your security baselines. Okay. Same sort of thing, but a lot less settings to search through, yeah, you just configure them as per your liking. So notice that these settings are all not configured by default. Okay, so your baselines will have settings configured by default. Your security admin focused policies will not. Okay, so we'll just enable a setting in here. Go next, same kind of thing with scope tags, same experience with assignments. So it's very similar to what you see with your security admin focused policies. Okay. Then once these have been assigned to your devices, various ways of monitor them. I've already highlighted that with the baselines in the root node. You can view the security posture of your baselines for your estate. You can also on a profile basis look at the device status. Okay, and that will show you the how successful that is on deploying to the device, and indeed drill down to a per setting basis. So each individual setting, as you can see, look at all these settings that are within that baseline, lots of them. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to our slide deck. Okay, so now just to cover, we have device configuration profiles, and device configuration profiles are starting to become the traditional way. I can't believe I'm actually saying this. The traditional way, can't believe I'm actually saying this about Intune, of deploying groups of related security settings to Windows devices. The problem is that Intune is a product that's developed very quickly over time, meaning that some profile types have become bloated with the settings available. So excuse me, could somebody mute your microphone, please? Thanks very much. So yes, yeah, the problem is with Intune, it's not a problem, but the thing to highlight with Intune is that the product has developed very quickly over time, meaning that some profile types have become bloated with the settings available. We'll see this shortly. So could somebody just mute the microphone? I'm just getting a lot of noise. Thank you. So yeah, what Microsoft are essentially doing is they're removing a lot of these security settings out of the traditional MDM profiles and into our endpoint security node. So you are going to see settings in multiple places at the moment, but it's how the Sorry, I believe I've been on mute for a bit. Somebody's muted me. I'm just going to quickly go back to the device configuration profiles. Okay, apologies. So I'm just going to repeat this part again. So device configuration profiles are becoming the traditional way, which is surprising to say that, the traditional way of deploying settings to devices within Intune. Basically, over time, as the service has developed, these profile types have become sort of very bloated. There's a lot of settings in them, and hence the new security admin focused policies experience. You will see settings in two places at the same time. So it's just to be aware of that's going to happen as the service evolves. Device restrictions. So this will contain many settings for customizing and configuring your endpoints. You'll see some Microsoft Defender antivirus settings and some of the smart screen settings in here, specifically out of the Microsoft Defender components. Endpoint protection profiles. These are more focused on the Microsoft Defender components in their entirety. So I mentioned App Blocker earlier on. So it provides a way of defining policies to dictate which apps and files are allowed to run on a system. As mentioned previously, App Blocker has been around since Windows 7. Typically, these settings were deployed by group policy, and to deploy these settings via Intune requires the deployment of the exported version of the policy using the custom configuration profile type. If we get time, we'll do a little demo of this later on just to highlight it. So there are scenarios where you consider using App Blocker to complement application control, which was a feature we spoke about earlier on very briefly. However, just to highlight, the primary difference is that the app control feature is a security boundary and App Blocker is an in-depth security feature in itself. An added benefit of deploying App Blocker via Intune is that settings can be applied to all editions of Windows 10, whereas when deployed via a group policy, this requires the enterprise SKU to be on the device. So I'll just drop into a quick demo again, and this time we're going to be looking at our device configurations, profiles, and our endpoint protection. So this time, at the moment, these are not within the endpoint security node, but they're going to be similar settings. So nice feature that was introduced as of the EMAC was that settings and apps, etc., are all kind of broken down into by platform basis, which is very useful, especially when you've got lots of configuration in your console. So we navigate to in this scenario to devices and then Windows, and then we have our configuration profiles. Okay, so we'd select to create a profile. Okay, and then we've got various two platforms, Windows 10 later or Windows 8.1. Select the platform, and as you can see, there are a lot of profile types for Windows 10. And I'll be honest, I haven't touched half of these still yet, and I'm working with Windows 10 and Intune a lot at the moment. So yeah, there's lots there, lots to get your head around. Okay, so first of all, we'll have a look at our device restrictions. Okay, click on create. Same kind of experience as before, so I'm not going to sort of dwell on that too much. And indeed now, so fairly recently, the service has been updated, so the actual interface is the same, regardless as to whether you are in your security baselines or your more traditional device restrictions or endpoint protection profiles, which is great. But again, as you can see, with our device restrictions, there are a lot of settings. Out of the Defender components, as mentioned, you've got your antivirus and your smart screen. Yeah, there's just a lot of settings in here. So you can do all sorts of things like block screen capture, copy and paste, all that kind of stuff. So my recommendation probably would be, and I'll come on to this further in a bit, would be to use your device restrictions for things that are kind of not specifically security feature related. So things like block your screen capture, etc. Okay. Okay, so you've got your assignments as per previously. In addition, with this profile type, you have the ability of applicability rules. So this is the ability to assign or not assign the profile if it conforms to a property of the OS. So either an OS edition, okay, which you can select an OS edition, or you can specify a Windows 10 version. Okay, and this is quite good because there are some settings in Intune that are they're only available to be applied to a device that, for example, Windows 10 1903 and later. And what that'll actually do is throw up a remediation error in the console, and it's kind of just adds the troubleshooting experience for the admin a bit more difficult. So you can use this kind of thing to help with that. Okay, so you'd click on next and then review and create, and same kind of experience as before. Okay, so that's your device restrictions profile type. Now if we go back and have a look at a different profile type, so get back into devices, we'll just discard that. Into Windows configuration profiles again. And then we will click on create profile. And then this time it's our endpoint protection profile. So I'll just quickly show you what's available in there. Right, select a name, and as you can see, all of the Defender components are kind of laid out quite nicely and gives you the ability to configure all of them. And it's the same kind of rules for assigning the device and your applicability rules. So similar kind of scenario there. Okay, so just another thing I wanted to highlight, I'm just going to go back a bit. We mentioned compliance policies. So that also is within our previously mentioned endpoint security node. So in endpoint security, device compliance, this is where we can go ahead and create our policy. Okay, select a platform. So as you can see, various platforms, we focus on Windows 10 today. Again, same kind of unified experience, which is starting to become prevalent across the Intune service. And you've got the various compliance settings that you can set to evaluate on your Windows 10 devices. Okay, so just to show you them. So the requirement of enforcing BitLocker, as I mentioned earlier on, the ability to enable secure boot, and all other kind of useful items to just monitor the security posture of your Windows 10 devices. So if we click on next, we've then got our actions for non-compliance. So by default, the action would be marked as non-compliant, and then you can actually schedule a time that you want the device to report back as non-compliant after. Default is 0 days. There are other options you can select as well. Other actions based on if the device is reporting back as non-compliance. So you can actually go ahead and retire a device if you see fit. Same kind of experience when you go to the assignment of the compliance policy, and that's it. Same sort of thing, really. Again, this is the kind of thing you would create in conjunction with your conditional access policies, which I'm not sort of covering today, as it's not kind of in scope. Okay, so just go back to the slides. So administrative templates. So the traditional way of configuring security settings on Windows, as we've mentioned a few times, is group policy, and this uses the ADMX format. Originally, up until Windows 10 7.03, there was no way to configure these settings within Intune, and having your Windows 10 as an MDM client, it simply did not support it. With the addition of ADMX back policy support, certain group policy settings were added in the form of what the Windows 10 MDM client natively understands. These are configuration service providers. Okay, and this is also what we call custom configuration. Custom configuration isn't particularly user friendly to create, not very easy for the admin, and indeed not very easy to explore what settings are available. So what you can actually do though is if there's not a specific ADMX backed CSP available, you can grab the ADMX file itself and deploy that along with the required setting for a process called ingestion. Now, there are various caveats to that. It's a little bit of a complex one. I've actually got a blog post on configuring the Zoom application on my blog. If you sort of require more information on that one, but I'm not going to kind of cover that one today because of sort of time constraints. So for admin templates, support was added for a dedicated profile type. So we saw that big list of profile types earlier for ADMX settings. And as of the 2003 release, or 2003 release, sorry, service release of Intune, the way that the MDM profile was presented in the admin interface has been drastically improved. And as you can see on the display here, and we'll just quickly go through it shortly, this is kind of more of the group policy management console experience we are used to. And there are settings being added to this sort of all the time. The current settings are more focused on the OS and Office specifically. Yeah, we've mentioned the admin templates profile. Okay. So to keep our devices secure, we need to ensure that they are managed effectively for your Windows 10 updates. So obviously we've got your servicing updates and your feature upgrades. Your servicing updates, which are for improving the performance of your device, and indeed, most importantly, ironing out any of them security vulnerabilities that have been identified within Windows. And then you've got your feature upgrades, which are your major upgrades of Windows 10. So devices need to be updated in a controlled and prompt manner, because sometimes updates can cause issues. Intune utilizes update rings in order to carry out this control, which is actually in the back end is using what's called the Windows Update for Business service. So these update rings enable you to configure the time at which update installs are enforced on the device, along with any other additional settings. In addition, there's another setting in Intune, feature update setting, which kind of complements your update ring and gives the ability to enforce the scope devices to remain on a specific version of Windows 10. So if you just deploy your update rings, devices are going to upgrade to each new version of Windows 10 as per the update ring settings. So just quickly drop into the console again, and we will have a quick look now at our admin templates profile. So again, devices, Windows, and this is the configuration profile. Okay. Create a profile type. I'll just whiz through this because we've all seen this multiple times, but we're going to select admin templates this time. Okay. And there we go. This is a game changer for me, and significantly improves the way that you're able to configure your more kind of traditional settings and applications on your Windows 10 devices. So again, you can search all settings that are available, which is quite useful. So I believe there's an automatic update settings in here for Office, the Office installer. Yeah, so you just search for that, enable it. That's it really. Not much to it. You also have the scope tags available for that profile type, and then you can assign and create it. Great. So just one word of advice on monitoring your configuration. So just going to go to a device. It's slightly different in the scenario for your administrative templates profiles, and I've been in contact with tech support about this. I believe this is something that's evolving, but essentially, just to show you how you can do that on a per device basis for configuration, we just go to a Windows device here. It's that one there. You can actually monitor the application of specific settings to a device. So endpoint security configuration. So in here, it is going to show you your baselines, as this one is, and then show you the setting posture of each baseline, each setting the baseline device. And then device configuration, be a similar kind of experience there. Okay. Now, just need to be aware that moving forward, the state of play with the ADMX profile type is that you will only see the deployment status of an applied setting if it has failed to apply to the device in this interface. That is my understanding of it. That was as it was left with me the last time I looked at it. So yeah, just be aware of that one, because that is something that has changed. Originally, if you had a profile with loads of ADMX settings in, you'd be able to see the successful application of that setting in a whole list. That's evolving as the service is evolving, and there may be some changes there. So just to be aware of that one for the ADMX profile types. Okay, we'll quickly have a look at update rings, where they're located. So be a case of going to your devices. You can see update rings are actually available in there, but I believe you can do it under the Windows context again. I like to drill into a per platform context in this console. I think it's useful. And as you can see, yep, so we've got your update rings. Okay, we'll create a profile again, same kind of experience as per your config settings. And just to remember, all these are, as with most of all of the other profiles within Intune, they are all essentially your configuration service providers. They are CSPs, but profiles have been built into the service in order to simplify the deployment of them settings. Yeah, these are the kind of settings you will see within an update ring. So just to reiterate, this is not just your quality updates that for patching security vulnerabilities and to improve the performance of your OS. It also includes settings for your feature updates as well in your update rings. Just to be aware of that. So I actually had some, on the face of it, some sort of good feedback from customers recently. And actually, in some scenarios, there's a perception that, and I strongly agree that with you using your Windows Update for Business settings and your update rings can sometimes give a better experience and more options than what you would traditionally see if you was using your configuration manager. I would say that I'm a bit biased towards Intune though, but I think people are very surprised as to what is available in Intune. And that's actually my summary slide, but there are lots of settings available in here. So I'm just going to quickly create this profile. You assign it to a group as with any other configuration setting. What I'd just like to do is also show you that you've got the ability with your update rings to, once they're deployed, if they're not, you can actually pause an update ring. for so many days. Can't remember exactly how many days, but you can pause an update ring deployment and choose to extend how long an update ring has been paused by. Also an option, and also just to add, when you're pausing and resuming and extending, that then drills down into specifically feature updates and quality updates. So you've got that granularity to pause the deployment for either of them if you've detected an issue. Uninstall, I'll be honest, haven't done a great deal of testing with this, but my understanding is that will uninstall the latest cumulative update from your Windows 10 device within that update ring. And you've also got in here just to monitor the ability to monitor the status of the deployment of your update rings as well on a per device and per user. Okay. So I think I'm starting to wrap up here. Okay, so I'm just going to talk now about a recommended order in which you should be, because there's lots of settings, and you know, I've heard the question, I've even said the question myself, I've asked myself, you know, why are all these different options available? I hope I've explained that already, but just very briefly, I'd just like to recommend what you should be looking at first and in what order, just to briefly summarize it. This is sort of profile type on a profile type basis. So first of all, if you can, purely from how simple it is to deploy it and how good a security posture is already created within the security baselines, I would consider absolutely to look at that. But I will also heed the warning again, you must be very careful with the testing of your baselines, because settings in them baselines are on by default. They are all turned on as per the recommendations from Microsoft security teams. Again, just to reiterate, there's baseline types as well. So you've got your ATP, you've got your Edge, and you've got your Windows 10 MDM. So if you can, have a look at, so if you're not really don't know where to start, have a look at security baseline. You can amend most settings, as I mentioned, in the baselines to suit your organizational requirements. So yeah, take a look at them first. If you need further granularity and actually want to separate out some of them security settings, absolutely have a look at your security admin focus policies. Most of them are now in general availability. I still believe that the one of them is still in public preview, but just make sure that the device, settings are tested first. Public preview features are fully supported. It just means that they may change before with any given notice before going into general availability. So security admin focus policies definitely next. Then in there, if there's settings that are not available, part of Defender, and you want to configure them, have a look in your endpoint protection profiles. And if there are settings as part of the OS that you want to restrict your end user, like to stop screenshots and stuff like that, have a look at your device restrictions next. Then I've just put other profiles, so other profile types in the list. See if the setting is available within them profile types on that list. If not, you then need to find out if there is a CSP specifically available for the setting you're trying to configure. Okay, and that is different on a per Windows 10 basis. So there's different CSPs added with Windows 10 versions. If not, then it's likely that the setting you're trying to configure is a traditional setting. So based on potentially the ADMX format. So next would be have a look at the ADMX profile type. Okay, if the setting isn't there and it is a traditional setting, then you would want to consider the ingestion process to deploy the setting, as I mentioned before. But you just got to be careful with this, and there's a lot of room for error with ADMX ingestion. I hope that just kind of clarifies sort of some recommendations moving forward. So just a brief summary. Yeah, there's lots of options available in Intune, as mentioned. Intune's a cloud service, and it's aimed at keeping your desktop estate modern. Just another thing to advise, use audit mode. So particularly when you're using the Defender features, use audit mode in order to evaluate how settings would apply to your estate before rolling them out. I mentioned testing and pilots, especially when it comes to the security baselines. Test the heck out of them settings before rolling into production. As I've mentioned as well, yeah, you can do that in Intune. I've said that countless times since working in my current role. People are very surprised as to what actually is available. And just to add, recommend to have a look at the other components that are available within the Endpoint Manager brand, as I discussed in the first slide. So with that, got a raffle available today. So submit your answers to win a prize. It's a good bit of kit that does, and ultimately, if you can, please give to charity. The event is supporting two excellent causes, so dig deep if you can. Also, just to advise, the SharePoint conference is now the Microsoft 365 collaboration conference. That's the next event that is scheduled in 2021. Hopefully, the world is a different place then and not so challenging at the moment, like it is at the moment. Thank you very much for spending the time today to listen to my session. I hope it was very helpful. Thank you. Any questions at all?
Hey, Leon, please go ahead and open your Q&A and you can see all the questions there.
Sure. Yeah, apologies, I was on mute for some of that, so I hope people didn't miss too much. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat there. Well, feel free to reach out to me over the social media channels. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm fairly active on my blog. I'm more than happy to help.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.